Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Following news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please, let's go to the headlines.
Tonight, breaking news right now as we come on the air, the controversial key vote on vaccines involving America's children. Just moments ago, the American Academy of Pediatricians blasting the panel, calling the committee making these new recommendations, quote, illegitimate. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy's newly formed hand-picked advisory committee, which includes vaccine skeptics, and what they've decided so far. Also tonight, to fierce reaction, Disney ABC suspending late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, quote, indefinitely, after pressure from the Trump administration. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr appointed by President Trump and his threat after Kimmel's comments after Charlie Kirk's death, calling on stations not to carry Kimmel. Well, tonight, the new outrage from some saying this is caving to political pressure and that this is an assault on free speech. And tonight, what President Trump is now suggesting the FCC do next. Tonight, we're reporting here in the brutal shooting of 5 police officers in Pennsylvania. 3 officers killed, 2 in critical condition tonight. And late today here, what the DA revealed. Just in tonight, the jet off the runway crashing into a home. First responders racing to the scene. The body found in the singer's trunk, identified as a teenage girl missing for more than a year. Tonight, investigators now at the home where that singer was staying, removing several items. Tonight, President Trump returning to the White House after his state visit to the UK, revealing Vladimir Putin has let him down. As Britain's Prime Minister says we must stand together on Ukraine. Back to the U.S. tonight, a man on a roller coaster dying after the ride, the ME finding multiple blunt impact injuries. But what the medical examiner is also saying tonight. Also, Made in America is back tonight, and we take you to Little Havana right here in Miami. Tonight, a mother's dream come true. The ice cream now being shipped all over the country. Her own grandmother inspiring the most popular flavor. And the big news tonight involving a star pitcher. What a run it's been. From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, reporting tonight from Miami. And good evening.
A Senate hearing highlighting the dangers of unaccompanied children at the border. 4 people now charged in a very disturbing case, accused of pretending to be parents and sedating children with marijuana gummies. Brooke Taylor is following this bizarre story. She's in Dallas for us. Brooke?
Hi, John. Yeah, we have reported countless times on the hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied children who crossed the border during the Biden administration, and then they were released to unvetted sponsors. Well, in this case, the smugglers went right through the Border Patrol checkpoints, pretended to be the parents, and also sedated the children. 2 U.S. citizens here and 2 Mexican nationals who are still wanted are charged right now in this smuggling scheme. Officials say that they smuggled children as young as 5 to 13 years old from Juarez, Mexico into the U.S. between May 2024 and October 2024. Pictures from court documents show the suspects at Border Patrol checkpoints posing as the children's parents by showing fake U.S. documents. The smugglers are accused of using gummies laced with marijuana to sedate these children, and at least one case, a child was sent to the hospital.
We've seen everything from Benadryl to now these gummies being used to be able to sedate the children, and that way they're less likely to answer questions or provide anything that's going to be inconsistent or contrary to what the smuggler is saying.
Court documents include text messages to the suspect translated to English, quote, young lady, are you working today? I have a boy 7 and 8, they are small. Another text says, quote, also Fanny, I have 2 little girls ages 4 and 5. Proof of life pictures of some of the children were found on the suspect's phones. Special Agent Stevens says the parents trust the smugglers to deliver their children to family members in the U.S. despite the significant risks.
These children are nothing more than currency to the criminals, into the criminal organizations. And so for us, we want to ensure that we interdict this and stop this before they get here, because there are instances where we find children that are in stash houses.
And HSI El Paso says the smugglers were charging $900 per child. They're still investigating to see how many children were smuggled through this specific organization, John.
Yeah, we know that about 320,000 of them were lost track of. So we hope and we pray that they're okay. Brooke Taylor for us. Brooke, thank you. Sandra?
Let's get an update on that. Bringing
Thursday night, the uproar over the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show.
This is what authoritarianism looks like.
What Kimmel said and the wider concerns about state censorship. Mission accomplished why the U.S. president's visit to the UK is seen as a win. And what Canada's Prime Minister hopes to accomplish on his trip to Mexico. Two provinces no longer providing COVID vaccines for free to most people.
This is unfortunate.
Why? And the message doctors say this sends. Plus, scientific evidence why the French president and his wife are headed to court to prove she was born a woman. Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with another indication of how the Trump administration is wielding its power and silencing voices it doesn't agree with. ABC pulled late-night host Jimmy Kimmel's show off the air after the Federal Communications Commission, the American broadcast media regulator, threatened the television network. Trump, who has repeatedly criticized Kimmel, today claimed Kimmel was fired for lack of talent. But it was Kimmel's monologue on Monday night addressing reaction to the arrest of the man who murdered Charlie Kirk that struck a nerve.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Kimmel's suspension flies in the face of Trump's promise to protect free speech. Members of his cabinet had already pledged to take action against those who appear to celebrate or mock Kirk's death. And a company in the midst of a $6 billion local news merger feared retribution if it didn't get Kimmel off the air. Jackson Prosco has our top story on what critics are calling state censorship.
The decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel came suddenly, just hours after the Trump-appointed head of the U.S. broadcast regulator threatened to target licenses of TV stations that aired Kimmel's show.
Donald Trump issues a warning to the Prime Minister.
The US President tells Sir Keir Starmer to deploy the military to stop illegal migration or risk losing Britain's identity forever.
It doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it destroys countries from within.
Will the Prime Minister heed the advice from the world's most powerful man?
Flights finally get off the ground. The first migrant is deported as part of the partial returns agreement with France, as another flight is set to take off any minute.
Jeremy Corbyn's new party is branded a boys' club by the co-founder, so is it heading for failure before it's even launched?
A push to secure more paternity leave for new fathers triggers a debate around how the state treats new parents. We'll be debating if it's time to give working dads more paid parental leave.
And sport, in the Champions League, Erling Haaland breaks another record as Manchester City beat Napoli. Marcus Rashford scores 2 great goals for Barcelona as they beat Newcastle, and Jose Mourinho is back in management in his home country.
Big contrasts with the weather. Over the next couple of days, it's going to be very wet for some, and there are Met Office warnings in place. Others will see some pretty warm sunshine today. Find out what you'll be getting with a full forecast with me coming up shortly.
Just gone 6 o'clock, I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Penny Smith, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Ici le Paris des Arts on France 24.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching Daybreak here on France 24. Our headlines this hour. Donald Trump suggests that broadcasters who criticize him should lose their licenses. The latest comments from the U.S. president amid ongoing debate over the canceling of late-night comedian Jimmy Kimmel for comments he made about the killing of far-right activist Charlie Kirk. The U.S. once again uses its veto power to shield Israel and reject a UN Security Council call for a ceasefire in Gaza. It comes as the war and the future of a Palestinian state are set to dominate the annual UN General Assembly, kicking off on Monday. And we have a special report on a new film that's causing a major stir in China. 731 depicts the atrocities committed by Japan during its World War II era occupation of China. Critics call it internal propaganda meant to stir up nationalist sentiment.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israeli ground forces have advanced deeper into Gaza City, forcing thousands of Palestinians to flee under heavy fire from tanks, fighter jets, and naval bombardment. The relentless strikes killed at least 79 Palestinians over the last 24 hours, according to Gaza health officials, with another 228 wounded. Among the dead are a mother and child killed in an air attack on a residential apartment in the Shati refugee camp. 13 people killed in an Israeli attack in front of Al-Shifa Hospital. This is Yasmin Zakut, who narrowly survived an assault that collapsed her family's home in Gaza City.
They pulled me out from under the rubble with my mouth filled with sand. They spent 2 hours trying to rescue me and my injured husband. My daughter suffocated under the debris. The ruins of the house crushed my legs, and the columns were on my chest. My husband and son are in critical condition, and my daughter died.
Gaza City is under a complete internet and communications blackout for a second straight day after Israel strikes destroyed infrastructure. Meanwhile, an investigation by the New Humanitarian has documented the names of nearly 3,000 Palestinians who were killed while seeking food, and almost 20,000 others who were wounded by Israeli forces. That includes nearly 1,000 Palestinians killed at or near aid sites operated by the militarized U.S. and Israeli-backed so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. In Brussels, the European Commission Wednesday submitted a proposal to suspend the EU's trade agreement.
Wednesday, 8:30, ABC TV and ABC iView.
Today, 7 teenagers arrested over the murders of 2 boys in Melbourne's West. The government defends its 2035 climate target amid criticism from the Greens and Vanuatu, who say Australia's ambitions don't go far enough. The US vetoes another UN Security Council resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. And fierce rivals Hawthorn and Geelong prepare to duke it out for a place in the AFL Grand Final. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. Police in Victoria have arrested 7 people over the deaths of 2 boys a fortnight ago. The 15-year-old and 12-year-old boys were killed on their way home from basketball practice at Cobblebank in Melbourne's western suburbs. Reporter Samantha Johnshaw has more from Melbourne.
Nearly 2 weeks after 12-year-old Chol and 15-year-old Dow were fatally stabbed on the streets of suburban Cobblebank, police say they've now arrested 7 people over the incident. Now, police say that they started from 6 a.m. this morning executing a series of warrants, and now 2 19-year-olds, an 18-year-old, 3 16-year-olds, and a 15-year-old boy are in custody being interviewed by police. Police say that this morning's arrests were the culmination of serious detective work trying to identify the collection of masked offenders that they believe were behind these attacks and gathering evidence. A motive for the alleged attack is yet to be determined, and perhaps we'll learn more about that in coming days. But for now, the community remains outraged and deeply affected by these deaths. 15-year-old Dow has been described by his basketball coach as one of the brightest players in the state. He had grand ambitions. He wanted to represent Australia or perhaps join the NBA. 12-year-old Chol also loved basketball and has been described as kind and caring. Police say that they had
Authorities are continuing efforts to locate a small plane that's crashed in a national park on the New South Wales south coast. Our reporter Isla Evans has more.
Search and rescue crews are scrubbing through dense bushland on the south coast today to try and access the site of a plane crash that occurred in Budawang National Park. The small recreational aircraft left Bankstown Airport at around 11:15 a.m. yesterday before it travelled south into northern Victoria and started returning back to Sydney. The plane was scheduled to return back to Bankstown that afternoon, but disappeared off the flight tracking radar before activating an emergency location transmitter around 4:30 p.m. Authorities including
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. British Prime Prime Minister Keir Starmer has praised relations with Washington on the final day of President Donald Trump's state visit. Starmer said the nations have renewed their special relationship for a new era, focusing on defense, trade, and tech. But there were divisions. Trump said he disagreed with countries, including Britain, moving to recognize Palestinian statehood. Democratic politicians and entertainers are decrying the indefinite suspension by the ABC network of Jimmy Kimmel Live. ABC pulled the show after Kimmel suggested that what he called the MAGA gang was trying to score political points from the killing of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk, and that Kirk's alleged shooter was a right-wing extremist. Donald Trump praised the move. Israel is ramping up its ground offensive in Gaza City, with tanks pushing deeper into the area and airstrikes pounding buildings. Dozens have reportedly been killed. The entire territory is without phone and internet connections. The UN says an estimated 250,000 people have been forced to flee to the south of the Strip. This is DW News from Berlin. You can find out more online, dw.com.
Say to Deborah when you bring you her full report at past the hour, and also looks at what has been suggested as the real reason thousands of Afghans have been looking to relocate to the UK. Her report will be at 6:30. Let me take you through some of the other stories making headlines this morning. And a gunman has killed 2 Israeli soldiers at an Israeli-run border crossing between the occupied West Bank and Jordan. The Jordanian Foreign Ministry said the gunman was a delivery driver. He was shot dead at the scene. Israel has halted the delivery of aid to Gaza from Jordan while they investigate. The United States has vetoed a draft UN Security Council resolution that would have demanded immediate ceasefire in Gaza. It is the 6th time the US has vetoed the Security Council's moves since the war there began. MI6 will launch a new dark web portal to recruit spies for the UK. The agency will target potential candidates from all around the world, with the portal allowing sensitive information to be given securely. And there are concerns the UK's undersea cables are vulnerable to attack, which could cause disruption to financial communication systems. Fears of foreign sabotage were heightened in January after a vessel was caught loitering offshore near the cables. The author Sally Rooney says she's been told she can no longer enter the UK without potentially facing arrest. She recently pledged her book royalties to the proscribed terror group Palestine Action, meaning she's at risk of committing a terror offence under UK law. Now, ketamine-based medications could be used as a treatment for depression soon, with calls for it to be made available on the National Health Service. Of course, Rachel Venables is here with us. Morning to you, Rachel. So tell us about this plan.
Good morning. Well, this has come from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, who really set out a new position statement on things like ketamine, which is a Class B substance, and also the use of other psychedelic, effectively hallucinogenic drugs, some of them Class A, to try and treat a myriad of mental health conditions. And we know that clinical trials in some countries around the world are more and more looking into these sorts of substances as a way of treating things like depression, also evaluating them for things like post-traumatic stress disorder, even perhaps alcohol or cocaine misuse. And these psychiatrists have certainly spoken out now supporting the use of ketamine, which is a Class B substance, to treat depression, though they stress they want to see it only in clinical settings and with real, very close oversight, at the same time as calling for more research into these other drugs like, for example, MDMA. But they've stressed the hype, in their words, mustn't be prioritised over good clinical practice. Now, in this position statement, the psychiatrists have talked about the real need for more drugs to treat mental health conditions. They've pointed to a real gap actually in their field, saying that in the last decade, for one new drug that's come on stream, there are 10 times the number in things like cancer, for example. And they say that while there are many drugs out there that can treat these conditions, they don't work for everybody. For some people it takes too long to work, for other people they have bad side effects. So they've just talked about the need really for more trials, particularly when it comes to things like ketamine. There have been a number of trials around the world looking at how it works for things like depression. We know that a variation of ketamine, a drug derived from it, it's a nasal spray called S-ketamine, that's actually already available on the NHS in Scotland, but not yet in England. So they're just pushing more and more for evidence-based evaluation here, but stress really patients have to come first, and if something like this is pushed forward, it would have to be done in a very safe clinical setting.
Right. Well, we're going to hear from one of the authors of that report, Professor Oliver House, later in the programme. Rachel, for now, thank you so much for that. Now, the UK is expected to recognise the state of Palestine as early as today, after Israel failed to meet conditions that would have postponed the decision. Serena Barker-Singh looks at how the position on Palestine has changed.
This is Asia Now.
It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. In Greece and at this hour. The U.S. and China could be moving towards a TikTok deal. Donald Trump says a framework is close and plans to speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping, as Washington also looks to extend a trade truce. From trade to AI, big questions about China's future are in focus at Singapore's Future China Global Forum. And CNA senior China editor and senior correspondent Olivia Xiang is there with more.
Now, as tensions between China and the U.S. continue to simmer and we are seeing shifts in the global trading system, what does all that mean for investors who are looking for opportunities in a world in flux? We'll unpack all that in a while with a guest.
And Japanese expert panel calls for a defense rethink involving more tech integration and homegrown arms to boost deterrence.
Africa News. The news. The Libyan Naval Operations Force said Thursday that they saved over 35 migrants in a rescue mission near the Tunisian border on Tuesday. The force released footage of the migrants off rescue boats and then received treatment on the land. The survivors included 5 women and a child, according to the Naval Authority in the western town of Zouara, which is under the control of the Tripoli-based government. Libya has been a main transit point for migrants fleeing war and poverty in Africa and the Middle East. On Sunday, a boat carrying Sudanese refugees that caught fire and sank off Libya's coast left at least 50 dead, according to the International Organization for Migration. According to the Missing Migrants Project run by the IOM, at least 435 migrants have been reported dead and 611 missing off Libya in the past 8 months. These pictures by Mali's state broadcaster showed long convoys of buses and fuel tankers being escorted by the army on Wednesday. The broadcaster said some 40 buses and more than 30 tankers are driven safely from Senegal this week. Islamist militants have attempted to blockade a key supply route to Senegal, Mali's main gateway to the sea, by staging ambushes and burning fuel tankers.
Obviously, the army needs now to, allocate resources more to the south, which they have been using in the north and the center. That might be also the goal of the jihadists, to force the army to use more, soldiers and equipment now in the south, which the jihadists hope, will open opportunities for them in the north. But, with this jihadists, they don't control territory. They do these hit and run attacks. So they might attack 1 or 2 convoys, but others will go through. They don't have the, manpower capacity to lock off or control an entire area. So obviously it creates a psychological moment. People never know when they might strike.
The attacks on fuel tankers and transporters mark a new challenge for Mali's authorities. They are taking place in the south, which was until now relatively safe, and also increase the fragility of the country's economy.
In France, canned sardines are getting harder to find and prices could soon rise. The shortage, experts say, comes down to overfishing and climate change, with warming waters reducing plankton and shrinking sardine populations. We're seeing less sardines, and I miss it. Much of the supply comes from Morocco, now struggling to keep up with the demand. The water is too warm. There is no plankton anymore, so the sardines stay small. So there's just less of them than before. Industry leaders say Morocco has become the backbone of French market. For 20 years, we've seen Morocco sardines taking over the French market. 2 out of 3 cans are made in Morocco. It would be better if there was more transparency about where the products come from. The scarcity felt by customers and producers alike is fueling fears that a French table could become a luxury.
At least 11 of 14 migrants deported by the U.S. to Ghana remain in custody despite official claims they were sent to their own countries. The deportees told the press they were being held in terrible conditions at a military camp outside Accra, where some reported falling sick from poor food and water. Lawyers argue there has been no transparency from Washington or Accra. It's been extremely difficult to get any type of information from the U.S. government about the terms of this agreement between the Ghanaian government and the United States government. In fact, we had to file a motion to the judge in the federal court asking her to please tell the U.S. government to give us a copy of the agreement. Human rights advocates warn the deportations put lives at risk while U.S. authorities have yet to respond.
Kenya's Faith Cherotich claimed the gold in the women's 3,000-meter steeplechase, turning defending champion Winfred Yavi, who represent Bahrain, with an impressive performance on the final lap. The 21-year-old Cherotich has now secured her first world title, adding to her bronze medal from Budapest 2 years ago and an Olympic bronze she earned in Paris last year. The race featured fierce competition and dramatic moments, especially as Cherotich expertly navigated a hurdle that Yavi stumbled over during the final stretch with a powerful kick. With a powerful kick, she soared over the last water jump and surged ahead to cross the finish line in a remarkable 8 minutes and 51 seconds, setting a new championship record. Taking home the silver was Olympic champion Wilfred Yavi, finishing in 8 minutes and 56 seconds, while Ethiopia's Sembo Almayeu clinched bronze with a personal best of 8 minutes and 58 seconds.
Tonight, 24 hours after ABC pulled Jimmy Kimmel's show, the new developments just in. The dramatic move taking the comedian and host off the air. It comes after monologues about and the president. Late-night legend David Letterman calling the suspension, quote, ridiculous. President Trump trashing Kimmel and suggesting broadcasters who criticize him should have their licenses taken away. And why the head of the FCC is saying this may not be the last shoe to drop. Also breaking tonight, new details on that ambush in Pennsylvania that left several police officers dead. The men who killed them accused of stalking an ex-girlfriend while wearing camouflage, armed with an AR-15 style rifle. Authorities searching a home, sources tell us, is connected to the pop singer David after the decomposed body of a teen girl was found inside his Tesla, the latest in the gruesome investigation. What happens when you see a nurse but get charged for a doctor visit? Our deep dive into the billing issues that could be driving up insurance premiums for everyone. As concert ticket prices soar, the new lawsuit accusing Ticketmaster of turning up
None of Oz and Jeff Bennett are away. On the NewsHour tonight, comedian Jimmy Kimmel is taken off the air indefinitely after his comments about Charlie Kirk's murder. What the move says about free speech under the Trump administration. An overhauled vaccine committee at the CDC, one that now includes vaccine skeptics, changes the guidance for what shots children should get. And why paying interest on the debt is becoming a bigger problem for the U.S. government.
When I look at our fiscal situation, the words that come to my mind are daunting, challenging, difficult.
The president threatens the networks over what he sees as negative coverage of him. I would think maybe their license should be taken away.
Also tonight, tariffs causing food shrinkflation. Remember when coffee was sold by the pound?
Now we're seeing 12 ounces, in some cases 11 ounces.
Eye on America, saving the nation's most famous swamp.
Hey, you call me a tree hugger if you want to.
And rescue K911. Oakley's house was burning down, but there was one thing he wouldn't leave behind.
When I went to grab the dog, you kind of just...
Thank you for watching Amish Shakil 5858. I am Amish Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye bye.